the yellow star during World War II that the Jews were made to wear, not without making any connection between Islam and Nazis in any sense. It was actually the Islamic world that originated the idea of different dress for religious minorities in the Middle Ages in accordance with this provision. That they do not ride horses, nor own swords, nor arm themselves with any kind of weapon, that they do not sell wine, do not show the cross, do not ring church bells, do not raise their voices during prayer, that they shave their hair in front so as to make them easily identifiable, and that they do not incite anyone against these Muslims and do not strike a Muslim. If they violate these conditions, they have no protection. Now, I want to point out, I'm not reading to you, I mean, I could be reading to you some old law from the Middle Ages that's 1,000 years old and nobody's paid attention to. This was a sermon preached a couple weeks ago in Saudi Arabia, in our ally here. Also, these provisions appear pretty much exactly as they're laid out by this gentleman in this book, Reliance of the Traveler, which is a manual of Islamic law printed in Cairo at Al-Azhar University. Al-Azhar University is the oldest university in the world, and it has great prestige in the Islamic world. There's a very interesting story about this, as a matter of fact. Sheikh Mohammed Sayyid Tantawi is the Grand Sheikh of Al-Azhar University. Last year, after, well, I guess it's 2 years ago now, after September 11th, he said, terrorism is a disease and Islam forbids the killing of innocent civilians. The BBC quoted him in an article that called him the highest spiritual authority for the world's 1 billion Sunni Muslims. And George Bush went to the United Nations and quoted him. Then, the same Sheikh Tantawi, last spring, said he stirred up some trouble about the suicide bombings because he originally came out against them, and that again made the headlines. The New York Times did a long story on Al-Azhar. Moderate Muslims fear their messages being ignored, saying that Al-Azhar has sought to advise Muslims around the world that those who kill in the name of Islam are nothing more than heretics. It has sought to guide and to reassure Westerners against any clash of civilizations. It said, in conversations at the graceful Al-Azhar structure known as the House of the Sheikh, clerks sitting behind Arabic-style windows and elegant carvings have cast themselves again and again as the guides to a gentle Islam. Well, once again, in the interests of trying to point out the challenges that we face in the contemporary world, Sheikh Tantawi last spring reversed himself about the suicide bombings and said that the killing of women, children, and teenagers was in accordance with Islamic law and was actually an Islamic commandment. But then you didn't hear the BBC calling him the highest spiritual authority for the world's 1 billion Sunni Muslims, or the New York Times writing about how Al-Azhar is struggling to present a gentle Islam. But this makes the situation very difficult, because these are supposed to be the people who are on our side. This is the guy that George Bush quoted. But unfortunately, the situation is simply not that simple. A few more things that I need to point out. What I've just been telling you about Sheikh Tantawi and Al-Azhar, you should remember in light of talk about the Wahhabi movement in Saudi Arabia. You hear a lot about the Wahhabis, and there is a book out now, as a matter of fact, that argues that the Wahhabi movement is actually responsible for the extremism in Islam and has spread this extremism all over the world, but that actually they represent a tiny minority of Muslims. And if the Wahhabis were stamped out, they're the regime in control of Saudi Arabia, then presumably our troubles would be over. But what I just quoted to you about Al-Azhar has nothing to do with the Wahhabis. Sheikh Mohammed Sayyid Tantawi is not a Wahhabi, and the people who produced this book are not Wahhabis. This book has in it instructions about jihad and about waging war against non-Muslims. Quoting the Prophet Muhammad, "I have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Perform the prayer and pay zakat," that's paying alms. "If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me, except for the rights of Islam over them." So in other words, if they don't say it, they haven't saved their blood and possessions from him. But the point is that this is not a book produced by a lunatic fringe. This book is produced by the oldest Islamic university in the world, by a tremendously respected organization, and it also carries endorsements from the president of the International Institute of Islamic Thought, from the Grand Mufti of the Jordanian Armed Forces, and from the Grand Imam of the Mosque of Darwish Pasha in Damascus. So you have Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And then it begins to look like, well, if these people are lining up against us, then who's the mainstream and who's the fringe? Another Saudi preacher a couple Fridays ago, Sheikh Mohammed Saleh al-Munajid, said, Muslims must educate their children to jihad. This is the greatest benefit of today's situation, educating the children to jihad and to hatred of Jews, Christians, and infidels. All right? Same thing. Speaking about the Jews, Sheikh Sultan al-Duwaid, another mosque in Saudi Arabia, calls them brothers of apes and pigs. Now that's nasty language, right? But he's actually referring to the second surah of the Quran, verse 65, which says that Allah changed the Jews into detested apes. And so these brothers of apes and pigs